American man. No one pay attention to what's in my head. I got a voice inside that needs to be fed. It's causing chaos everywhere I land. I got a fever. I got a fever.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to Ohio Sports Talk. I am your host, Doug. That's the coach, Jordan Maxson. And tonight, we are joined by two very special guests. Rudy, Reyes, how are you doing tonight?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on again. It's a pleasure to be back here.
Thank you for making your second stop on Ohio Sports Talk. And then the guy, Dylan Wilkerson. We've been going back and forth all season. Dylan, glad to finally have you on the podcast. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. I have to say, I tweeted about this, but it feels like a little bit of an away game. You know, like I'm coming into the shoe, big game type deal, Ohio Sports Talk. But hey, it's going to be a great game, and more than ready to preview it with you guys. Thanks for having me.
You know, early in the year when we scheduled this game with you, we were thinking, you know, we're going to get a good game out of you, and that's what we're expecting tonight. So definitely looking forward to it. Jordan, how you feeling, buddy? Two great guests, biggest game of the year. All of it on the table. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, feeling great. Hey, and Douglas, second podcast back for a while. Good to get the team back together. He's been producing behind the scenes, supporting me on my little solo run that I had going on. So great to get the team back together. Rudy, you were part of that. So great to get you back with the full team back together and get the full experience with us. So I'm happy. I'm pumped. It's been a hell of a run for both teams that have made it now to the national championship. And right now, these are the two hottest teams in NCAA. I did an interview a couple hours ago with one of their former players, but I'm going to kind of echo the same things over and over. These are the two hottest teams in college football, where they did get a little bit of help for some plays, and we'll dive into it, to get there. But that's any given Saturday, any given Friday, and any given Sunday. So happy to see these teams finally meet in the arena and duke it out now 2 years in a row. First year for the national championship, but definitely kind of getting a replay from last year too.
Definitely. All right, guys, let's start off at the top. We'll set the table. National championship game Monday night, 7:30 Eastern, obviously, 4:30 Pacific. Guys, Ohio State comes into this game. Tough games against high level competition. They put a beat down on Tennessee. They put a beat down on Oregon. Texas was a closer game, a game, that I think showed Ohio State's ability to be a little bit tougher and pull out a good victory. And then Notre Dame on the other side, playing good football, great defense, ball control, beating Indiana, beating Georgia, impressive win there, and then beating Penn State. Dylan, let's start with you. Two good runs here to the national championship. Are you impressed more with Ohio State's run, or are you impressed more with Notre Dame's run, given the context of the season and what we saw throughout?
Most definitely. I think when you're looking at this season as a whole, I would have to say probably more impressed with Notre Dame. And because the loss to Northern Illinois, I don't know about you guys, but when I saw that game, I was like, this Notre Dame team is going to lose 4 games. I mean, they have USC, Louisville on deck. There's no way that they're going to do this. And to see them in the championship, Marcus Freeman, Ohio guy, has done a great job. Huber Heights guy, actually.
Exactly. Wayne. Yep.
Yeah, Wayne. My uncle teaches there. I've heard all about it. It's awesome. But if you look at just the playoffs, it is very hard to try and negate what Ohio State has done. Obviously, we can make all the jokes we want. Me being a Michigan fan, with that loss at the end of the year, you can definitely tell that loss specifically lit a fire under them, lit a fire under Ryan Day. This Tennessee team, even if they were out without Dylan Sampson, a great team, a great defense, and then to get your revenge on Oregon the way you did, the Texas game was a little closer than the first two. Yeah. But I definitely think, looking at the playoffs, it's Ohio State that gets the credit. They've looked great. Some are saying maybe Ryan Day should send Sharon Moore a ring if they win it all. Kind of like, oh, hey, thanks for doing this for us. Thanks for lighting a little fire under us. Not me, but just a couple people saying that on the timeline.
Rudy, same question. How have you felt about these two separate runs? And in your opinion, which run have you been more impressed by?
There's a run that really, and it runs deep in the fact that you had two coaches that were African American descent that went into this season wondering if they would ever meet. And that's a run in of itself. And Freeman did it his way. And Ryan Day did it his way. Interestingly enough, Ohio State themselves, I'm probably a little bit more impressed, not from the standpoint of they've done a better job than Ohio State or Ohio State's done a better job than Notre Dame. Each one of these teams respectively plays so hard and wanted to not lose even harder to make sure that their runs were of equal quality. I mean, without going into numbers too quickly, as I know we're probably going to segue into that eventually, but during the regular season, Ohio State ranked number 1 on total defense, which is absolutely insane, followed by the third team that gave them more of a handle with Texas, and that's why it was a closer game, because there was more of a defensive battle. You see more one-on-ones. You see great man zone. You see good zone coverage. You see a too-high safety. You see all those plays. I'm more impressed with Ohio State, but just an edge to suggest that they had a better run with the losses, the minimal amount of losses that they've had throughout their season. Mm-hmm. So Ohio State would be my take.
Jordan, I know us being the Ohio guys, a little biased towards Ohio State, but taking nothing away from Notre Dame, I thought when they beat Georgia in that second round game, to me that really solidified who they are and what they can be, and they followed it up with the 3-point win over Penn State. When did you start considering Notre Dame to be a legitimate title contender, in the playoffs? Because I don't think everybody thought, Notre Dame was going to be in this position when it started. So what are your thoughts there?
Outside the Georgia game, I'd say, the Georgia game definitely opened my eyes, but just kind of the way their defense is playing even before that, kind of got me going, because their calling card has really been a mobile quarterback, a great run game, and their offensive line in the trenches has really been stepping up. Once their quarterback showed that extra gear and mobility, especially when they played Indiana, it's been that opened my eyes big time. That's when I kind of thought they would be able to kind of go on a legitimate run. Did I think they were going to make it to the game? No, but I thought they were going to make it, not having a bye, outside of, the natural bye that they had because they don't play in a conference championship. So they kind of had that natural time off going into it. But, definitely moving forward, I would have to say probably when they beat Indiana, because Indiana, their only losses were against, Big Ten championship winners in, Ohio State. So looking at their losses and then, the smackdown that Notre Dame put on them, especially with their corners, playing excellent on the outside, it gave them the ability to play that man coverage and open up the blitz packaging. I'm a defensive guy nowadays myself. So it really just kind of opened my eyes that this defense could go on a legitimate run with this mobile quarterback in this run game.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing that for me, guys, the reason I wasn't as worried about Notre Dame coming into it, and obviously, Ohio State doesn't have a lot of room to talk with that bad loss to Michigan. USC, when they, scored 35 on this Notre Dame defense, I thought that was kind of a red flag. We're coming into this, and, we didn't really talk about it too much. Were you guys expecting this out of Notre Dame? Did you think they had it in them to get this far, Dylan? Because that USC team, there's some talent on that team, but they're not a good football team overall, top to bottom. Some talent here and there. Giving up 35 to USC after they struggled all year, did that give you any red flags about Notre Dame? Because it feels like they've been on a wave of momentum in their own way. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, that game against USC, and this is something that I think we will see moving forward with how the Big Ten looks now. You have these West Coast teams. I think we're going to see games get played closer, where the teams have to travel 2 or 3 time zones. And that was kind of what we saw with this Notre Dame game. I think another one off the top of my head, Oregon-Wisconsin was a close one where Oregon had to go to Camp Randall. I did not take much away from Notre Dame in that game, even though they may have played poorly, because I think that's something important context to add. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Even honestly, USC coming to the Big House, I understand the USC that people had higher expectations for USC at that time than they did at the beginning of the year, but making that travel, I think, was a big thing, and that's kind of the reason why I don't take much away from Notre Dame with that performance against USC. But that's just me personally. I think we'll see that for years to come in the new Big Ten.
Okay. Rudy, you're, West Coast guy, coming across country, coming into this, we see the field, we see where who's everybody's playing. What were your thoughts on Notre Dame before we got into the college football playoff? I mean, good defense, solid head coach. Riley Leonard does enough to get it done. Good with his legs, great running game. What were your thoughts on Notre Dame, and how did you feel about them going forward in the college football playoff to where they are now?
Well, let's step back. So we're talking about transfer portal, right? Transfer portal is a huge component of where these guys go, when they go, and the reasons why they go. NIL money has a lot to do with why guys like Riley Leonard and others, excuse me, to find a reason to go to high quality, high caliber schools. Notre Dame is one of them. And it reminds me of Notre Dame of old. When you look what they did in 2023, it was their logic to suggest, let's jump on the 2024 bandwagon and do better than we did in 2023, which they did, and then some. Why? They were short. They fell short in 23. They didn't fall short in 24. Because overall defense by the end of the year for them was 298 yards of total defense, and they ranked 9th above Ohio, not Redhawks, but Ohio. And I thought to myself, this has got to be something good. Riley Leonard, just, again, portal guy, a number of them, Burke, portal guy. You have a variety of guys that are coming in to wanting to play for top-notch schools. Their NIL money is disgusting. I mean, the amount of it, I should say, is disgusting in regards to what that means for them, what that means for their NCAA career, as a lot of these are seniors like Riley Leonard, and the rest of the pack. They really find themselves in a very good situation from what the transfer portal brought them. Guys who didn't get shots in other college schools, maybe was, benched, maybe coming from injury, coming back from injury, not the easiest thing to do. So if that school's not going to play you, even though you've been verified, hey, you know what, coach, I'm good to go, and there's nothing good to go about it from the coach's standpoint, then you got to do what you have to do. And when NIL money was introduced to the NCAA landscape, these guys wanted to go where the money is. And schools like SMU, they have a little bit of it. Tennessee, they have a share of their pie. But Ohio State, the Ohio State University that guys have, scratched and clawed and, basically trying to run up the pole to get to, big NIL money there. Notre Dame, historic NCAA team, going back to the days of Rudy, jumping on people's shoulders. And of course, that movie makes me cry every time I see it. And you probably would have asked me, are you going to be hooked into when they start chanting Rudy, Rudy? And I'm going to say, you know what? No, I'm not buying it because there's one thing that I'll buy into, and that's Notre Dame keeping this game close. We'll get into the nuances of that, I'm sure. But I think overall, when I look at what Notre Dame has done, I take nothing away. This is going to be the biggest slugfest from a defensive standpoint and total defense that anyone has seen in quite some time. This is going to be a game for the ages. And I don't say that as a cliche. I say that because it's friggin' true. Both of these historic franchises, that's the NCAA franchises, not NFL franchises, but the guys are being paid like NFL players on an NFL franchise. Anyway, I digress. But I will say that there's a fair amount of money involved in this game from an NIL standpoint, and guys like Riley Leonard and company are going to show up to play. Just like the Ohio State, team is ready to play too, ready to punch them right in the mouth. So, this is not for the faint-hearted. Will Howard will get his touches. He will get his opportunity, just like Riley Leonard. So this is going to be a knockdown, drag out, punch you in the mouth so you can get up and take it, wipe off the blood, and get back in the fight.
Yep, for sure. Jordan, a lot of talk about NIL money. It's been talked about with Ohio State all year, the massive budget, bringing in guys like Caleb Downs, like Will Howard, re-signing and bringing back some of the older, the previous regime guys. Everything goes into that. The $20 million price tag, ranking only behind Texas and NIL dollars. I saw a graphic today. Notre Dame paid Riley Leonard $1.5 million. Ohio State paid Will Howard $1 million. Let's kind of get into the game a little bit here. Jordan, what is the difference maker in this game for you going forward? What about Notre Dame has to be stopped for Ohio State to win this game?
Ohio State's defense has got to account for, and I'm going to kind of echo myself, got to account for the quarterback mobility. We have to, whether that's Caleb Downs, whether that's Styles, we got to get a guy that is going to be able to play not only kind of containment, but make that decision whether or not to come across the line, but make sure we're not giving up the plays to the running back, which we were, obviously giving up to Texas. We were having a hard time accounting for the running back while also spying Ewers at the same time. So I think that's got to be cleaned up, whether it's in the secondary or the linebacker position. We just got to get that communication there. And for really Ohio State, it's going to be, can Will Howard, be patient? We saw him get a little impatient there in the third quarter when he threw that interception. He wasn't accounting for the linebacker dropping off in coverage. He was trying to hit his man Smith, which he's, beyond this game, it was all open season. So I don't blame him. You play a game where you pummel your Big Ten opponent in Oregon. You play a game where you pummel, your first opponent over in Tennessee. And, he was just ripping it. So when he got into a game where, and that's one of the reasons, Tate had a huge game, he's got to be patient and just take what Notre Dame's defense is going to give you. And, that's the dump off passes. That's Tate coming across the middle in those, modified mesh routes where, Ibaka and Smith are just clearing them out, clearing everybody out deep and, winning those linebacker, coverage zones. So that's what it's going to come down to. And, can Ohio State establish more of a run game than he did against Texas? We know the running backs, they got their touchdowns and they got their touches, but overall, that was one of the lowest yards per carry average for Ohio State all season. So if you really look at that, if Ohio State can offensively establish the run game, and then, Will Howard just be patient, use the tight ends, use your slot Tate, and, really get those other guys involved outside of our two big threats, I think they're going to be successful.
Okay. Dylan,
Coach,
go ahead.
I want to speak to that real quick because I think the key for Ohio State here, and I as a Michigan fan, I make jokes. I want Ryan Day lifetime. I'm even wearing the shirt. I told Doug I would do it. Stand up.
Looks good. I love Ryan.
I love Ryan. Let's get him coach for life. But I will give him credit where credit's due. In the Michigan game, they ran it between the tackles so many times. And then in the playoffs, we see that has almost been completely negated. We look against Texas. Ohio State ran the ball 22 times. 8 of those were in between the tackles. Ryan Day and Chip Kelly made the adjustments that they needed to make since the Michigan game. That's 100% to Ryan Day's credit. And you want to talk about Will Howard being patient. You want to talk about Will Howard making the right decisions. This is something that Chip Kelly and Ryan Day applauded him for after the Texas game in the Columbus Dispatch, saying, Texas did a great job of containing Jeremiah Smith. You throw safety back there, put bracket coverage on him, make the other guys make the plays. They said Will Howard had to be patient. Will Howard had to make the right reads and throw the ball in the right spots. And for the most part in that Texas game, he did. I think that is going to be important for Ohio State in this matchup because if you ask me, Notre Dame has a better secondary than Texas. It's going to be a taller task. But if Will Howard can do what he did against Texas, stay patient. Don't force anything that isn't there. I think that is going to be the key for the Ohio State offense in this. So exactly to your point, Coach, I think you're right there.
Okay.
And I appreciate that. And I do want to also kind of echo that a little bit on, Ohio State's run game, accounting for, a backup center that we moved our right guard to center when the center had his, freak accident, whatever you want to call it. The message boards are everywhere on how it happened. Not important at this point.
Saying about that?
But not important at this point. But trying to run between the tackles with a makeshift line against a defensive tackle that's going in round one against Michigan, of course that was a terrible idea. And still playing with a backup center, in the CFB playoffs, I'm glad that they made the adjustments because our guards have been playing phenomenal right now on the inside. So getting those guys moving to the outside, pulling our guards and, forcing that extra blocker that through the lane there, on the sidelines has been fairly successful. So that little zone read that Will Howard has been able to kind of perfect, minus a bad snap here or there, look for that big time against Notre Dame because, we're still rocking with a backup center.
Yeah, and real quick, one more thing, just to add context. I said 22 runs against Texas, 8 were in between the tackles. For reference, against Michigan, they ran the ball 26 times, 14 of those were in between the tackles. So there is a coaching improvement. Yeah, it blows. It's crazy, but there is improvement. I think that's something to you can look at that and say, okay, there's some positive movement there. Now, if I'm Marcus Freeman, I am finding some place with a camera, and if someone asks me what's the key to this game, I'm saying – we got to win the run game. Whoever wins the run game is going to win. Try to get in Ryan Day's head, something like that, because that's what it's going to have to be for Notre Dame to win.
Right. Yeah, you know what? I'd like to interject on that because Riley Leonard completed 66.5 roughly of his passes this season, which says that he's following his reads, looking at his progressions. If it's not a check down, it's a throw out. He's been very good about to be able to identify what he's facing from an opposing defense, whether they want to close the gaps or if they're going to leave them open. And look, let's face it, Jeremiah Love's been banged up. It's been that way. But in all fairness, he's very efficient. There's no question, almost 7.2 yards per carry. So that's good for him. It's good for the Irish being able to move the ball. The problem I'm going to have is whether or not they can take advantage of the corners because you're going to get all this pressure up front. Will the corners be able to do their job and cover guys like Love if he gets thrown in the passing game? Or you can even add to that and say, well, do we have another guy who's willing to do that? Well, of course they do. They have guys all over the place in this Ohio State system. Ibuka is a very good example of that because he's used in the passing game as well as he is in the rushing game. So you have some diversity. So in order for Ohio State, and to your point, Dylan, you're going to have to win the battle at the line. It's going to be between who's going to open up those A gaps, how you're going to run between those tackles, and what guy you're going to use. And the offensive scheme, if that fails, what is the secondary? Who's going to be your guy? What's the formation? You looking at a 2 tight end set? Or are you looking at a slant receiver? What is that going to look like for Ohio State and Notre Dame in this respective matchup? It's going to be, like I said, this is going to be one of the greatest inaugural 12-game matchups that you'll probably ever see.
And to talk about that with you guys, to jump in, now that we've kind of talked about it a little bit, what would it take? We know the offensive line is big. We know that Notre Dame, they're going to try to force a turnover to steal possession in here or there because, again, yes, they are a great defense, but when your offense is so focused on ball control, keeping time against a team like Ohio State, I feel like you got to have to force a turnover, a fumble, a tip pass at the line, or an interception. Do you guys think that if Ohio State plays a clean game, can Notre Dame beat them in a clean game? Dylan, we'll start with you.
It makes it a lot tougher. I'll be completely honest with you. And this is something that we said on CarterCast ahead of the Notre Dame-Penn State game that we were hilariously wrong on, was that if Notre Dame goes down 10 points or so, 14 points, they don't play the style of football to be able to come back from that deficit. Very similar to Michigan of 21, 22. Like, they just aren't that explosive in the pass game they're going to have to do something like that, force a turnover. I'm thinking even maybe a special team score. Like, that's not even completely out of the cards for the Fighting Irish here. If the game's completely clean, I think it's going to be a slugfest. I think it's going to be just Big Ten football, even though Notre Dame's not in the Big Ten, classic Big Ten football. And I think that there will be some kind of a turnover here or there. I think we're in for a little bit of chaos, but I don't think the margin for error for Notre Dame becomes much, much smaller if they don't force a turnover or someone doesn't make a mistake on Ohio State's end.
You have to capitalize.
Rudy, same question.
Absolutely. You have to capitalize on what the defense gives you. Ergo, you have to capitalize on what the offense gives you as well. So from a defensive standpoint, you either apply the pressure up front, close the gaps, get the nose tackle involved early and often, especially on very short yardage situations that will get into the backfield, preventing Will Howard from doing what he needs to do, and that's get rid of that football. Now, snap to throw for Riley Leonard has been exceptionally well. I can't even understate how well that is. Riley Leonard, okay, it's good. I think Will Howard is going to have to get that snap to throw percentage even that much higher. So in other words, his reads have to be that much faster, that much more accurate, because we've seen untimely interceptions, not to suggest that any interception is timely, but in the matter of which, in the context of the game and where you're looking at from a game standpoint, what does the time clock look like? How much time do I have, right? What the defense is going to have to do for Ohio State is, look, Howard Cross, the true nose tackle, he's not very big. So you're going to have to, as a center, recognize that this guy, ranks, second with 66 tackles, 39 pressures. He's quick. He has very good hands. He knows where the ball is going to be. He has batted passes, which is still not an accurate description within the context of whether the NFL accounts for batted passes in 2025. I don't know. NCAA doesn't count for batted passes either.
No,
but
they don't.
No, see, and that right there speaks to Howard Cross's credit, as well as it does for RJ Oben, right? This is going to be tough. This is not going to be easy. You have to win position by position, player on player, mano a mano, and you have to find ways from not only how you can get around these guys, how to get through them. What's your power move going to be like? What is that going to look like? Are you going to have to mix it up too? Right? You got a swim move to the outside. You have an arm bar maybe on the inside, but not be called for holding, or you have to play smart. This game's not going to be clean by any stretch of the imagination.
Okay. I'm with you guys there. Let's take a step further. We're gonna break it down position by position, and then we'll get our final predictions out here at the end. Let's put this up here, guys. Jordan, we're just gonna go right down the line. So position breakdown: Riley Leonard, quarterback of Notre Dame; Will Howard, quarterback for Ohio State. Jordan, based on both of them, who do you see having the better quarterback?
I mean, and I'm going to base it off just purely saying experience. To me, it's going to go to Howard. His experience in the Big 12 before he got to Ohio State. He's been in bigger games, both for the Big 12 championship and playing under the lights for Ohio State now on this incredible run in the playoffs. My experience wise is going to tell me Will Howard. Not taking anything away from Riley over in Notre Dame. He's just not there yet experience wise for me to sit here and say, he one or the other, because you're kind of splitting atoms at this point. But I'm not being biased when I say this. Just if I'm a coach and I had to pick a quarterback to go into a championship game, I'm going to go Howard because he has championship experience.
Okay. Going down the line, Rudy, quarterback matchup. Who do you take? Will Howard, Riley Leonard?
Oh, to your point, Coach, I'm on to that. And I am almost willing to co-sign. Almost. And I say that with heart in hand, only because Leonard has been absolutely nothing short of amazing from a portal system, right? Where he comes over 2,600 plus yards, 19 touchdowns. a QBR of almost 78. The guy's 6'4", 216 pounds. He's from Alabama. Okay, we know Alabamans love their food. This guy is a big, tall truck, and if you get in his way, and he is a quarterback, but when you get in his way, watch out, he'll bowl you over. That's so tough because Will Howard brings the experience. He brings the swag. Even though it's not noticeable on the field, you can't really see that on the field. He doesn't parade around, or I can't even see him doing the money sign getting drafted by an NFL team. So if there's anyone that's going to take the edge here, I got to go with Riley Leonard, only from the standpoint of the way and manner of which he throws from snap to throw, which is a very low percentile in regards to what that ball looks like to a receiver's hands as a part of the scheme and what that looks like. I got to give a slight edge to Riley Leonard. He's playing with a chip on his shoulder. He knows he's playing a more experienced quarterback on the other side, but I think Riley Leonard has the slight edge here.
All right, Dylan, quarterback. I know you've had some trepidation about Will Howard throughout the season. He's playing his best football right now. Riley Leonard, he's playing very good football. I'm going to talk about it a little bit myself, but who do you pick in the QB matchup here?
Well, before I give my pick, Rudy, I'm going to push back a little bit on the Will Howard comment, because did you see him smashing that cigarette as 11-point favorites against Indiana on that sideline, baby? Oh, baby, those.
But that was Kurt Signetti's fault. That wasn't. Come on.
Come on.
That was Signetti's fault.
Of course, it was Signetti's fault.
No.
Of course. For my pick here, listen, I don't want to. Okay, I am kind of foreshadowing my pick for another position group here, but I've always said Ohio State is wide receiver university. It's either Ohio State or LSU at this point, and I think if you look at these two guys in a vacuum, you give them the same offensive line, you give them the same weapons. I'm going to take Riley Leonard here. I think he's complemented well by the running backs. I understand that I just talked about it being in a vacuum, but if you look at their ability on the ground, Will Howard just under 2 yards per attempt this year rushing, and Riley Leonard over 5. I think that's the difference here. And these are both teams that coming into this year, it seems like the offensive schemes were going to be based around the rush option. There's like having a dual threat quarterback, having a great back, having two great backs. And for this specifically, because I think that is what both of these teams wanted heading into the season, I'm going to go Riley Leonard.
Okay, interesting. Riley Leonard.
I want to chirp back a little bit because, like,
give it, Coach. Come on.
No, and I'm not trying to hate on you a little bit, but but you look at where Howard had to play before he transferred to Ohio State. Howard didn't have two running backs with 1,000+ all-purpose yards like he does over at Ohio State. Howard doesn't have to tuck and run the ball like he did when he played in the Big 12, as he does when he plays in the Big 10. And people forgot about it. And that was one of the big key plays against Texas when he kept the ball on the 4th down play, because people forget that Howard has mobility and Howard can tuck the ball and be that guy and be that tank. So make no mistake, he can be that mobile quarterback when you need him to be. It's just in Ohio State's offensive system, especially under Chip Kelly, we have so much talent where Rudy even kind of touched on it, where Ibaka is also playing in the backfield along with two running backs that are 1,000+ all-purpose. That's too many Chiefs and not enough Indians when it comes to, all right, how are we going to run the ball on this play? You're not going to go to, you're not going to look at your quarterback and ask him to run the ball consistently, especially, you want to make a deep playoff push in a field of 12. I'm not going to risk my quarterback's health. So Will Howard hasn't had to run the ball and be that guy that he was in the Big 12, where he was extremely more mobile and was averaging, 300 to 400 yards a season before he got to Ohio State. He just doesn't have to be, but he can be. And, Chip Kelly put that in his bag on that 4th down play. No, make no mistake that there is no tomorrow in this game. So Will Howard is going to be mobile more than probably you've ever seen him all year long.
So my counterpoint to that would be, you had mentioned that they forget about Will Howard, and he has that 4th down run, and that's great. I'm not taking that away from him. people expect it from Riley Leonard, and he's better at it. Like, it's not even like he's taking them by surprise. It's they know the quarterback run's coming. It's going to come 10 times a game or however much. And he's been better at doing that than Will Howard this year, even when they expect it from him.
For sure.
And the bigger question is whether or not that's going to be a suspect play, right?
Yeah.
So if the defense can sniff that out and recognize, oh, this is a quarterback design play. Look, these guys have very high football IQs, especially the seniors, especially those guys that have been in the trenches, who've been there, done that, put the sweat equity in, and to recognize what a quarterback draw is. They're going to experience more of that in the NFL at the next level. However, this is going to be, sorry, not sorry when Riley Leonard decides to pick you apart because he's running like Lamar Jackson. And I only compare that to the effect of his escapability, which is not a stat.
Very generous. Very generous.
That's a generous comp.
And okay, let me give you my answer here.
Situational football, essentially.
We're giving Riley Leonard a lot of praise here. And he's effectively done very well with the feet this year. In the 3 playoff games, though, he's got 145 yards rushing on 40-some carries. In the game against Penn State, he averaged 1.9 yards per rush. He did have the touchdown. Against Indiana, 2.7 yards per rush. The reason he had the great game against Georgia, he had the 32-yard run. I mean, yes, he is effective in spots, but in the playoffs where teams have been more oriented in stopping that, he's not been as effective as he was in the regular season. So while I do think, he provides that aspect, he's also been sacked 6 times in this playoff run. He's thrown 3 touchdowns. He's thrown 3 interceptions. Again, the offense of Notre Dame doesn't have the weapons Ohio State has, but, 171 yards passing per game in the playoffs. Will Howard is completing 74% of his passes right now. He's throwing for over 300 yards a game, a 3-to-1 interception ratio, and he's been sacked twice in this run. To me, if you guys really think the running's that big of a difference, based on what we've seen in the playoffs, if you're talking about regular season, I'm all for what Riley Leonard's done. I think he's been a little bit more maintained than we're letting on here, based on the statistics. I'm going to go slight edge Will Howard. I think his arm talent is greater than Riley Leonard's. I think it's going to come down to Riley Leonard having to make big-time throws. And I think, Dylan, you kind of commented on it, the receiver position, some of these other positions play a big factor in that. But Will Howard has the benefit of that. Give me Will Howard by a slight edge because I think passing, I trust him a little bit more to get it done. It's close.
Well,
these 2 are very good players. Rudy, go ahead.
Sure. No, I was just going to say it's really based on situational awareness, right? If the play doesn't call for you to run 20 plus yards, then don't. You have plenty of schemes. You have plenty of players. You have plenty of options. Both coaches in all positions here in both of these respective teams have very high IQs. They know what they're doing. They know what to do situationally. One has done it at the NFL level. Well, it didn't do great, but he's done it at the NFL level. But they all have one thing in common, and that is let's win a national championship. We're here at the stage. Let's get it done. But I think situational awareness for Riley Leonard, because he's had to, may fit an NFL scheme somewhere, not in Lamar Jackson land, but in a different land. We're talking rookie land. And when you get into the NFL, you're in rookie land. So yeah. I think that, you look at where Riley Leonard is. I'm not floating his boat by any stretch of imagination. It would not surprise me for Will Howard to get punched in the mouth a couple of times where he gets back up, spits it out, and goes back to it. Because he's just that kind of guy. That's just who he is. This is a battle of I hate to say this word, it's a cliche, but the blue bloods. And these teams represent that so very well. They're going to run, they're going to punch you, they're going to slug you, they're going to swing around town and get out of their way, or they will knock you down doing it.
Definitely. All right, guys, let's move to the running back position. We'll start at the bottom. Dylan, the running back matchup, Jeremiah Love, Williams for Notre Dame. We're not gonna count the quarterbacks in this. We just kind of harped on that a little bit. Versus Henderson and Judkins for the Buckeyes. Which way do you go here when it comes to running backs for these 2 teams?
All right, Doug, talk to me here. Are you giving me fully healthy need Jeremiah Love? Or
You
as
can't.
he is
You can't
right now?
because you have to go by what they are right now. And
Okay.
right now, he's not 100%. We don't know exactly what percent he's at. I think he's getting closer to that level, but we got to go on what they are right now.
Okay, so I'm going to give a cop-out answer here. I'm going to give an actual answer, but I'm going to follow it up with a cop-out excuse. I am going to say Notre Dame, but I'm also going to say this is probably the closest of the position groups that we could compare. And I look at PFF's elusive rating. This is obviously, I think, Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, I don't want to say they were robbed, but it is unfortunate the circumstances that they had to deal with in terms of their offensive line. And I think anybody that watches football is going to be able to say that their production suffered because of things that were outside of their control. If we were ranking running backs, I would go Love, Henderson, Judkins, from what I've seen this year. Jeremiah Love has been extremely elusive. He actually ranks third in PFF's elusive rating. Henderson 37th, Judkins 109th. I say Love. I also think that's just a product of some things happening they are not in control of.
Okay. So you're going Notre Dame, though. You're giving Love the edge.
I'm going Notre Dame running back. Okay. I
Okay.
promise we'll get some Ohio States on the board from this side, though.
It's interesting. It is interesting because, okay, Rudy, we're working our way up the list. Notre Dame versus Ohio State in terms of running backs. What do we got?
Running backs, that's going to be very interesting, and I'm glad you asked that question because as much as I love's running ability, he's a dynamite. He absolutely knows where that goal line is. He will do absolutely everything, including injuring his knee, to get there, to cross that line. However, and this is not a cop-out, there's no cop-outs here, and there are no cops here either, so I'm going to say it like it is. Love being banged up is a problem. It's a big problem. It's a big problem to have, especially if you're Notre Dame. Now you have to go to your number 2. And nobody likes number 2. Everybody likes number 1. Well, number 1's not going to be as healthy. Maybe he's on the charts of, climbing up to be number 1, but right now he's not. So the edge for Travion Henderson at 132 carries, almost 1,000 yards. His movement, his hand-eye coordination, his ability. When you talk about the elusive rating, he certainly ranks up there pretty dang high. And I like his elusiveness. I like his shiftiness. His hips almost remind me of a kind of like a very young Notre Dame guy. What is his name? Let's see, number 36 for the Steelers. Oh yeah, Jerome Bettis. Reminds me of Bettis kind of moves with his hip and how he utilizes that. Not big for body, and of course, Jerome wasn't always that big, but I had a chance to talk to him a handful of times. Just a fabulous guy. But I'm going to have to go with Travion here. It's a slight edge, only because he has done it not only in the receiving game, but in the rushing game. So when you have a dual threat guy like that, you want to utilize him, and he's, as far as I know, 110% healthy.
Mm-hmm. Jordan, running back matchup, who do you got?
And this is splitting hairs, so I want to give Notre Dame respect where it is. But to me, it's just Ohio State's backfield, only because they complement each other so well. And Dylan did say a lot of credit there. Outside forces and things that they can't control is a reason one of their stat lines is down, but also because they came in and they had to share the backfield. You look at what Judkins did over at Ole Miss before he came to Ohio State. He was one of the best running backs in the SEC, period. You come to Ohio State and you have to, share carries with Henderson. That changes the game a little bit, but Judkins, he came over here to win a national championship, outside of the NIL money when it's all said and done. So really, if you look at the backs, they just complement each other so great. You look at Henderson's ability to get screens and, be effective in that pass game, pick apart zones. They both block well against the blitzes. They both pick up, really well on pass protection. And I think that's where I'm going to give them the edge. It's not just stats for me, or to say Ohio State has a better run force or brutality when it comes to running. Pass protection is something that's kind of overlooked in the running back position, and that's where I'm going to give Ohio State the edge. You look at how many times each quarterback's been sacked, in his playoff run or in a season in general. A lot of that for Will Howard is the protection, not only from the line, but, the blitz pickups between Henderson and Judson, giving them that extra time to get the ball out. So to me, with Notre Dame's defense, I'm going to go Ohio State's backfield in this game because of the pass protection and the ability to get the ball in slip screens and just kind of make a play out of nothing situations.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to touch on that, Coach, for half a second, because both of these guys, both RB/wide receiver and Ibuka, has also done the very same thing. So this backfield is identical regardless of who you put in. One's more shifty than the other. One's a little bit more faster than the other. But when you talk about splitting hairs, you're splitting carries. And you're right. And to your point, the ability to block guys out and being that blocker while the other one is a superstar in the end zone with a near tiptoe or tiny toe drag for a touchdown or whatever you want to call it, that certainly cannot be overlooked in as far as either one of these guys are concerned. So when you're involved in the rushing and the receiving game, you're a threat no matter who you play against.
Yep, definitely. To kind of split it here, if Jeremiah Love was 100%, I think from top to bottom, he is the best running back of this group. But with his injury, and I've really liked what Aeneas Williams has done recently in the playoff. I thought he's been effective in multiple ways for Notre Dame. I've liked what he's been able to do. I'm going to go slight edge Buckeyes, and I'm glad Jordan brought it up. The blocking that Judkins provides, the home run threat that Henderson provides. Looking back at the regular season, these guys were both 40 yards away from also being 1,000-yard rushers each. That's a lot to ask, especially with how much Ohio State throws the ball because of the weapons at wide receiver. It's very close. It is razor close. If Love was what he is most of the time, I would go Notre Dame. Because of the injury, I'm going to go slight advantage Ohio State. Let me ask the panel here, because to me, non-biased, we're not going to, we can get into it if we really need to. Do any of you guys have Notre Dame having a better wide receiver core than Ohio State?
No.
Carnell Tate's wide receiver 1 at Notre Dame. I mean, okay. Yeah.
I just, we can get nuts and bolts on some of these ones, but Ohio State separates themselves at receiver in a big way. I just think that's obvious, and I think we can move on from there. Let's talk tight ends, guys. Rudy, let's start with you. The tight end room for Notre Dame versus the tight end room for Ohio State.
Tight ends for both of these teams have been just absolutely fabulous. And I say that just from the standpoint of what they've been able to do in the throughout the regular season. Yeah, playoffs, that's a whole different animal, and I get all of that. And you can have a 20 minute conversation about who's going to be better or who's not going to be as good, and and all that. To be honest with you, I think that when you look at the amount of tight ends that have played in this game, they don't get a ton of looks, but the looks that they do get is red zone opportunities. That's who they have, and that's who they're going to play against. This is always a tough group. I look at tight ends, I think to myself, okay, are these guys going to do it? Are they not going to do it? Are they going to go to the tight end? Is he just a blocker? I have a hard time picking who's going to be good, who's not going to be good. Mm-hmm. This is so hard. I'm probably going to have to. I'll probably have to call this at par, as far as who Notre Dame is, what they continue to bring from a tight end perspective. They've had some great tight ends. Don't get me wrong. They've done it time and time again. You had Riordan, you had Flanagan, you have Larson. I think Flanagan would probably be. Would have been good, but he obviously left the team after his tenure had expired. But I like Riordan. I think Riordan is a guy that's not talked about very often. He does have great hands. I like his blocking capabilities. If there was a guy I would pick and want on my team as far as a tight end set for both these guys, and he's not the blocker, I'd give it to Riordan.
Okay. Okay, so you're gonna go push still on this one though.
Mhm.
Officially on a push. Dylan, tight ends. This one's a close one. Who do you have the advantage for tight end?
It's very close. And when I go very close, Doug, I say, who do I not want to be lined up against if I was on the other side of the field? G. Scott absolutely terrifies me. Anytime I see it, like highlights or anything on the field, I'm like, that is one guy I do not want to be close to on that football field. Not to mention his ability to step in as a pass blocker, run blocker. I think that it supersedes anything that the Notre Dame tight ends do. I would go Ohio State here because of G. Scott. Man, talk about a big dude.
A freak.
A freak.
His athleticism and his ability. Jordan, tight end group. I think, like we just talked about, G. Scott, freak. What are your thoughts here? Mitchell Evans, also a very good tight end. What are your thoughts here?
Ohio State has the athletes, but and hold on, Dylan. I'm gonna shock you some. I'm gonna give this. I'm just picking on him. It's good fun. I got to go on his show, so it's only good nature. But I'm gonna give the edge to Notre Dame in looking at from this game standpoint. Now Ohio State does have the athletes. Ohio State does have size, but you look at the way each team utilizes that position for how the team operates. Yeah, Ohio State has great blocking, but Notre Dame uses it more in past situations. Just the production hasn't really been there for Ohio State this season. Like in seasons past, you look at Cade Stover, you look at guys that we had prior to that. We always kind of had that guy. We haven't had that guy this year. It's been tight end by committee, which is fine. I'm not taking away from that, but there hasn't been like the stud for Ohio State. So this year for this particular game and this particular playoff run, Notre Dame has that edge for me. They utilize him more in the passing game. You see him more utilized on third downs, and more kind of the blocking plays, especially with the mobile quarterback that likes to run the ball and likes to do those option plays and quarterback keepers. A lot of that's heavily shouldered on the tight ends position to make sure those things are effective and those things get done. So I'm going to go with Notre Dame on this one.
Interesting. Okay, close one for me, guys. I'm going to side with Notre Dame. Mitchell Evans has had a good season. He led Notre Dame in receiving and catches this year. He was third on the team in yards. First on the team in touchdown catches. G. Scott had one of the most important game plays in the Texas game. That third and long where he fought for the extra, 5 or 6 yards on that catch by the near sideline. Impressive stuff that like only an athlete of his caliber could do. But the consistency of Mitchell Evans, I think, has been there all year in terms of the pass catching game. Give me a slight edge with Notre Dame at the tight end position. I think it's very close. I don't think you go wrong either way here. Guys, this is where it starts to get interesting. The O-line position. Dylan, starting at the bottom here. O-line, we've talked about it. We mentioned it at the top. Makeshift O-line for Ohio State. But Notre Dame's also had to deal with a little bit of their own issues with their O-line. Dylan, how do you see this one shaking out in terms of O-line?
Yeah, having Knapp out at tackle is tough for Notre Dame, but I still give Notre Dame the edge here. And to be honest, I mentioned at the top of this the straying away from the run game in between the tackles, and I think that kind of gives you the answer you need to know too. Is that this offensive line, and this isn't, again, it's not Ohio State hate. It's just unfortunate circumstances that are outside of anybody else's control. Now, I will say Jackson at left tackle for Ohio State has
Donovan Jackson's been phenomenal.
Oh my gosh, he's been great. He come in week 4, I think, and he made his start there, and he's gotten just better and better as the years gone on. But as a whole unit, I think you have to go Notre Dame here. And again, no fault of anybody's. It's just injuries happen, and it's kind of what you have to deal with.
Rudy, moving up the ladder, Notre Dame, Ohio State offensive line.
Ohio State offensive line, I like Cameron Huron, and I see that from an athletic standpoint. Or excuse me, yeah, he's for Notre Dame, he has been. I mean, he's 6'4", he's 205. He's a big dude. He has great athleticism. I like how he can open those A gaps. I think he has the presence of mind to know what to do with swim moves, power moves, whether somebody goes low, somebody goes high. He has great hand-eye coordination. To me, he's going to be that ultimate game changer. Maybe not initially, because you can watch all the film you want, but without actually playing your opponents, there's no way to know how well you're going to do against them. You can go mano a mano, you can look at the stats, you can look at the weight, you can look at all of that, but it's really about owning that line. And I think Haran certainly answers that bell for a lot of people and maybe checks those boxes as well. So Notre Dame for me.
Okay, Jordan.
Even with the center injury for Ohio State, I'm going to go Ohio State on this one, and that's just because of their level of play that's been really shown. Like you touched on, Doug. Only 2 sacks in this whole run right now. That has to be said for a lot. And one of those sacks just came on a goal line blitz where they just Texas they sent the house, and Howard took the sack instead of making the bad play. So, it's still going to show up on the stat sheet as a sack, but, decision sacks in my mind, if you look at the play itself. Other than that, I mean, this line's played clean. This line's playing well. The pass protection has been excellent. The running outside of Texas gave them some fits in the run game, but, we adapted. We had screens that were successful. We had quick outs that were successful, and they were able to hold just enough to pick apart the zone. So I'm going to give just Ohio State based on this run right now that they're on. And, it is a backup center, but it is a guy that did play center for an entire year prior. So, I mean, he has experience and can bring that to this game. And that's just kind of where it gives the edge for me.
Okay. To me, it's going to be, I'm going to go with Notre Dame, but the way Ohio State's played in this playoff run, in the way that they've been able to combat good defensive lines, talented players on the defensive line, has been very impressive. When you lose 2 All-American candidates throughout the season, it's going to be very difficult to even make it work, makeshift or not. Losing Seth McLaughlin, the center, losing Simmons is going to be a first-round pick in the NFL draft. It's hard to recreate. Notre Dame losing their left tackle will be very interesting with Ohio State's pass rush. We'll talk about that in a second. Slight edge, Notre Dame. Slight edge. I think Ohio State's playing up to their level, though, and I'm very excited to watch the trenches on Monday. Guys, going to the defensive line, we'll start with you, Jordan. Or I'll start, actually, on this one because I think it's interesting, and I think I'm going to go with the momentum. Give me Ohio State's defensive line right now. The way Jack Sawyer's playing, the way JTT's playing, the way the guys in the up front in the D tackle positions are playing. This is some of the best defensive line play I've seen out of an Ohio State team in a little while. We had the Joey Bosa's, we had the Nick Bosa's that were fantastic individual pass rushers. We have 2 guys who are extremely talented that are clicking at the right time, and they are causing absolute havoc for quarterbacks, running backs, everything in the backfield right now. Give me Ohio State's defensive line. Jack Sawyer's played like a man possessed in this playoffs. JTT's been the best he's been in his Ohio State career in this run. Give me those guys. Jordan, you take it away from there.
I'm just going to piggyback off of that. I think Ohio State's defensive line, this is the best I've seen as a whole unit. Like you said, we've had the Chase Youngs, we've had the Bosa's, we've had the individual stars, things of that nature. Sam Hubbard was a 3rd-round pick, but I think he played a little bit better than that when he was at Ohio State. But as a whole unit, especially on the defensive tackle position, and you even saw it when JTT was out for a couple of plays, and Texas took full advantage of that. These guys right now, on injury report aren't showing anything major. So just basing it off of that and what I'm seeing, I got to go with Ohio State, and that's purely based on momentum. If you would have asked me a month and a half ago, who had the better defensive line, I would have gave it to Notre Dame 110% because, Jack Sawyer and JTT, all year long, especially on our show, and we pounded the table about it. weren't really playing up to that level of where they were recruited at. So, but on this playoff run, it's been complete opposite. So just purely based on a momentum standpoint, and you think about the offenses they've shut down in Oregon, you think about the offense that they've shut down in Tennessee that was high flying and considered a very velocity and high scoring offense. I got to give the edge to Ohio State right now, where Notre Dame's kind of played those gritty games. They haven't really had a full blowout offensively or defensively. So right now, just based off pure momentum and looking at the stat sheet, I'm going to go with Ohio State.
Rudy, D-line, who you got?
Man, that is going to be tough. It's going to start with 4 names, not 1, 4, and they're all last names: Sawyer, Ransom, Downs, and Burke. They're not actually up front, at least not all of them. Jack Sawyer certainly checks my box in the biggest of way, bold-faced italicized check mark. This guy is an absolute stud. I mean, you can basically probably put him everywhere. You can put him on the edge. He'll cause havoc. 6'5", 260. One thing about him, he's very opportunistic. He sees daylight where there is none. He recognizes where the ball is at all times. He's like the safety version of a ball hawk, but in a defensive, pass rusher, all rolled up into one. 24 solo tackles, 9 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and 1 interception. He's even had 2 touchdowns in his career based on a scoop and score. This guy is an absolute terror. I would not want to play across from this guy. And just for that reason alone, if nothing else whatsoever, and Burke doesn't fall in that conversation, but if nothing else, Sawyer certainly checks that box for me, and that is my edge, literally. Sawyer plays the edge, so I'm giving the edge to Sawyer and the Ohio State defense.
I like that you're giving Sawyer the credit, but JTT has had a quiet. I think he's up to 11 or 12 sacks now for the season
right now.
11 and a half. So he's doing it quietly, and some of the plays that he made, he batted 2 balls down, which you even said it's not even registered as a stat line. To me, that's about as good as a sack because it stops the play. Because had that pass been completed, there was a window wide open that the receiver was going to tear apart that zone had that ball reached his hand. So
Burke is also part of that conversation too. 140 total tackles, 27 passes defended, 1 forced fumble, 4 interceptions, 4, not 1, 2, 3, 4 interceptions, 31 yards, and a scoop and score for a touchdown. So he's also a very quiet but deadly assassin in that defensive scheme. So my edge clearly going to Ohio State. You just heard my point.
Dylan, very talent rich in these trenches up front. Who do you give the edge to on D-line?
Had you have asked me this, and there's no way you could have asked me this before the Penn State Notre Dame game, but had you have asked me this before the Notre Dame Penn State game, I would have said Notre Dame. But after seeing what Nick Singleton was able to do, I mean, he had a day on that defensive line. He was running wherever he wanted to against Notre Dame. I would have to go Ohio State. Now, I will say, you got to give me the chance to get the jabs in there. Nothing makes me happier than hearing Jack Sawyer's name the last 3 weeks, because I think that is the only man who will never have to buy a drink in both the state of Ohio and Michigan. The things he has done for this Michigan football program is absolutely amazing. Wow. And when they win the national championship, I think he needs to give Mason Graham a big old kiss on the forehead for firing him up this playoffs. But I'm going Ohio State. Jack Sawyer, Mr. Owen. That's what I like to call him.
Oh my God!
You can mute his mic, right?
The problem is when you win these games, you can say whatever the hell you want, and there's no pushback because it's true.
If only you guys would have known me when I was in elementary school, and middle school, and high school, when you guys were kicking our butts for the better part of 12 years.
Yeah, it would have been a lot more fun for us then. And the funniest thing about that, Dylan, is Jack Sawyer had the best individual play of that game. And I understand the stuff afterward, fighting with the flag. He's played so well. I'm as an Ohio State guy, I'm so happy for him. I hope they can cap this off because of the way he's played and stay in the extra year. I understand the stuff with Michigan. I understand some of that, the way it looks, but he's playing phenomenal football right now.
If I can prognosticate a little bit for the national championship, I actually think JTT is going to have a bigger game than Jack Sawyer, because I think Jack Sawyer's matchup with Wagner is definitely tougher than what JTT has to face with left tackle Knapp. So if he even plays,
that's well said. And like we talked about, JTT's had 2 sacks. He had a sack and a half against Texas, 2 sacks against Oregon, 2 sacks against Tennessee. So he's up to the task in terms of pass rushing. If he has that weaker matchup, guys, next level, we're going to go to the linebackers. A lot of athleticism here at linebacker for both teams. These guys can turn and run. They can go sideline to sideline. Yeah, I think I know where you guys are going to go here. But Rudy, let's start with you at linebacker. Where are we going?
CJ Hicks is a guy that I don't think gets enough looks. Honestly, I just don't. He's done it like all season long. He's still a junior. He still has room to grow. He has talent that he's been bequeathed throughout his younger time. But he's had 2 sacks and 22 tackles. 22 tackles for a guy who wasn't even expected to play as a junior, or much less be in the position that he's in right now, playing a national championship. So I think CJ Hicks may be the guy for me, maybe not for you, but he may be a guy for someone else out there. But I'm going to take CJ Hicks only because he's going to have his hands full with a very with the wideouts and the scheme that Notre Dame is going to run. That's going to test him early and often. But I think CJ Hicks has the propensity to be one of those, safety blitz package kind of guys where, he's already had 2 sacks in the season. So I think that CJ Hicks, despite not getting the looks that he has from scouts, and, he still has time, right? He's just a junior. But I like CJ Hicks in this, and he would be my guy, at least in the linebacker position.
Okay. So you're giving Ohio State the edge in linebacker?
Yes.
Okay, Dylan, what do we got here? Linebacker.
I got one name for you. That's Cody Simon. As much as I hate to say it, but that guy defensively can do everything. Whether you want him in run defense, whether you want him in pass rush, whether you want him in coverage. I would say coverage is probably the weakest spot he's at, and that's saying something. I would go Ohio State here. I know this is kind of what Notre Dame's built off of, this defense, this pass defense specifically, but I would go Ohio State. I think Cody Simon carries a lot of that load. I think it's Ohio State.
Jordan, piggyback off of that. Where are you going Ohio State also?
I'm going Ohio State. I'm glad you said Hicks. I coach in an Alter system. That's where he's from. Kettering Alter. Gotta love that little shout out there. But yeah, it's been right now Ohio State's linebacking core, especially on this run. They've been doing it both in pass coverage and in run support. So this is the best I've seen him play in recent memory. So right now I'm going to give the edge to Ohio State.
Yeah, I'm gonna stay with you guys here. I think Ohio State, the talent level at linebacker. Notre Dame, they don't have really holes at linebacker. We saw them struggle with Singleton, who's a phenomenal running back, and what's the guy's name? Tron. The other Penn State running back who's very talented in his own right. But to me, I think Cody Simon's played like the best linebacker in the playoffs. I think he's been that good. In my opinion, he's going to be the one who's doing a lot of the shading of Riley Leonard. He's going to be the one trying to pressure Riley Leonard and make him make those mistakes. Who I am worried about a little bit in the linebacker group for Ohio State is Sonny Styles. We saw him get beat twice on wheel routes. If Notre Dame watched that, they are going to wheel route Ohio State a few times with Jeremiah Love or Aeneas Williams. So watch out for that. Sonny Styles is a phenomenal athlete, but he gets caught into bad positioning. So while I think talent-wise it goes to Ohio State, watch out for those kind of plays with Sonny Styles. Cody Simon, I trust that guy with my life. That guy is a phenomenal football player.
I'll buy him a beer the next time I see him.
Please do. But yeah, give me Ohio State's slight edge here. Linebacker core, cornerback. This is where I think things shift back in Notre Dame's direction. I'm going to give it up to Notre Dame on this one. Just, guys that can really as much man as they play, these guys don't get burnt a lot. Now, they're going to play against the best receiver in football by some accounts. We can argue if you guys want to, but Leonard Moore, talented cornerback. A couple other guys that they have. Give me, Benjamin Morrison, who doesn't even get targeted anymore a lot of the time because he's so good. A guy who's probably going to go in the first round in the NFL draft. Give me Notre Dame's corners in this one. Rudy, you look like you want to say something. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you took that pick right out of my brain. It was like it's like an open slot to pull out a ticket as you're entering an auditorium. Morrison's going to challenge Will Johnson. Let's just start right there and stop right there. He has great instincts. He's very sticky in coverage, great fundamentals. I mean, natural fundamentals. Some of that's trained, obviously, but for the most part, you have to be able to move your hips. You have to play on the defender. You're playing on the ball. And he's done that. He's shown that time and time again all season long. So even though he's not the most splashiest guy, he's effective. And I think that's one of the reasons why he's going to get picked in the first round in the upcoming NFL draft.
Dylan, cornerback position, where are we going?
Yeah, the Buckeyes obviously have some bright spots here. You look at Downs, you look at Ransom, I guess he's a safety, but
those are safeties. I was going to save those.
Safeties.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I think you look at Notre Dame's pass defense. It's number 1 in EPA per drop back allowed. And I think that has a lot to do with the cornerbacks. I would have to go Notre Dame here. Denzel Burke, though, I will say, Carter Cast, we posted a clip, and he actually a big Carter Cast fan because he commented on it, except it was not very nice.
Yeah, I would assume
he was laughing at it. So, but yeah, Denzel Burke, a big Carter Cast fan. Got to shout that out.
Well, and Jordan, I'll let you go here in a second. I thought it was interesting. Burke only played 20% of the snaps against Texas. They brought in Jermaine Matthews, who's extremely talented. I think he's the best corner on the team. Because he's not the starter, I'm not going to go overboard. Jermaine Matthews will be playing a lot against Notre Dame. Igbinosa is, he just too many penalties. He's a decent corner, too many penalties. This is going to be very interesting to watch the matchup because, anybody who's tried to guard Jeremiah Smith man-to-man, it just doesn't go well. You could be really good. You could be a fantastic corner. Notre Dame hasn't played a lot of receivers that are this talented as the Ohio State group. I will be interested to see if they stick with man the way they've talked about it. But, in terms of talent, give me Notre Dame's corners. Jordan, go ahead.
Not a lot needs to be said here. This is kind of across the board. I'm going to give it to Notre Dame. They have two, in my mind, they have 2 first rounders, at cornerback that's going to go into the league and play Sundays on the regular. Not taking anything away from Burke, but Ohio State's just not on that level yet when it comes to the cornerback position. We have talent, we have athleticism that we can play chess with it, but that's not what our strength is when it comes to our secondary, which we'll finish up here on what the strength is. But Notre Dame easily, you guys covered it well. I'm not going to retread too much, but those guys are going to have two first rounders playing on Sunday next year.
Well, last thing, and then we'll move on, guys, to safety, and we'll round it out. Leonard Moore, the freshman, 6'2", 187, had a phenomenal season with Morrison missing some time here and there as their number 1 corner. I'm very interested to see how he matches up with guys like Ibuka and Carnell Tate. Given the experience that Ibuka has, I will be interested to see the matchup there. Will youth play a factor at all? Because the talent is there for Leonard Moore. That guy is fun to watch. Moving on, guys, to the safety position. This is where I think it's, you guys said earlier the running back's the closest. I think safety is the closest because, and let me spell out the case for you guys. Xavier Watts, in my opinion, is one of the best safeties in the country. Caleb Downs is one of the best safeties in the country. Those two, in my opinion, somewhat cancel each other out. Side note, I would love for the Browns to somehow grab Xavier Watts in the 3rd round and have him play with Delpit in our secondary. Enough about Cleveland. Those guys suck anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Where it comes down to me is Latham Ransom matched up with Hurd, with Schuler, some of their other safeties. Where do you guys see this one going? Jordan, let's start with you at safety.
I think it's going to be Ohio State at safety, and that's just because you look at the takeaways, not only when it comes to the ball hawking skills over at Ohio State, but the run support that the safeties give Ohio State's defense has just been lights out. It was never more prominent than it was on a Texas goal line stand. Before Jack Sawyer's play, Caleb Downs just shut it down. His ability to read and feel where that offensive line is trying to take things and shoot the gap and force the ball carrier to go, into another level where linebackers are just and corners are just waiting on him. That can't be coached. Those are just natural instincts. 110%. And that's where I'm going to give us the edge at. Both teams have great safeties when it comes to pure coverage, but Ohio State has the edge when it comes to run support, in my opinion.
All right, Rudy, some talented safeties, man. Some really talented guys back there. How do you see it going down?
There's a load here, gentlemen. There is an absolute onslaught of some of the best safeties you'll see in college football, if not the top 5. That's going to round out a repeat of what we seen just 2 years ago with a very heavy defensive draft right up front, and most of that went to the Dallas Cowboys, and still don't know what to do with them. Here we are 2 years later. So here you are with a guy, and you said it. You said you keep picking my brain, Doug. Xavier Watts just been absolute lights out, shut down, All-American. He came back in year 5 to help lead, this team to get to where they need to. And the Irish was his team. I mean, you can't say enough great things about Watts. I have to give it. It's so tough because, there's so much talent in the safeties and the secondaries for both of these teams, more so in the safety group than I think in the quarterback group, because these guys are relatively not as tall. They're not as heavy. They're relatively light, maybe a $195, soaking wet. So I like Xavier Watts. He has 76 total tackles, 5 solo, 3 assisted, at least that game against PSU, Penn State. I think that this is, I got to give the edge only because you have Watts in the secondary, and there's really no other reason why.
That's fair. I get that. Okay, Dylan, round it out for us. Safeties. Some of the best players on the field, to watch in this game will be the safety position. What do you got, Dylan?
Rudy, Doug is in your head. Coach is in mine, because he brought up the point exactly that I was going to bring up. Is like, when you talk about safeties, yeah, you're expected to be great in coverage. You're expected to drop back and be great against the pass. But Ransom and Downs help out the run defense in ways that these guys for Notre Dame don't. And I would have to give this secondary position group to Ohio State solely because of that. These are things that, I mean, yeah, they're expected from safeties, but Downs and Ransom just do it so well. And you can look at that pitch play on the goal line where Downs comes in, just shuts it down completely. Like, I think you have to go with the Buckeyes here. And looking back on it, this is a travesty. I think I've given more positions to the Buckeyes than the Fighting Irish.
You've done really well on that. You've done really well.
Scrub that from the record, please.
You've done really well. It's been really nice of you to do that. Guys,
objectivity.
Let's get into the final phase here. I position by position, it's been a fun breakdown. Let's get into our final predictions. Rudy, final prediction. Who is the national champion come Monday night?
I love the historic value.
And score.
No, of course. I always give that. Notre Dame has just been an absolute dynamo for so many different reasons, and above all the other reasons that we had given it. And we can probably go on an hour talking about the Fighting Irish and how they keep fighting, how they keep maneuvering, putting themselves in positions just like this. Coming up short last year, but not so much this year. So it makes this a more difficult decision for me. It's gonna rely on two things: mistakes and who takes advantage of those mistakes. And at the end of it, when it's all said and done, I think Ohio State pulls this off with a field goal. That's how close and tight this game's going to be because of the defensive battle up front, because of the aforementioned package groups that you're going to have between tight ends, between corners and safeties. And, everybody has to be playing in sync. Again, few mistakes means that you're going to execute better. You're going to feel the flow. You're going to feel that pendulum staying on your side of the swing and not shifting over to Ohio State. But unfortunately, I think it's going to happen early. And I'm going to say often, not early enough, but often enough to where Ohio State takes advantage of those mistakes and leads them into positive territory to kick a game-winning field goal. Okay. So that would be 24-21.
I just met Rudy, but I will have to applaud the gumption for saying that Fielding is going to kick a game-winning field goal.
That guy the shit out of me. Sorry. That guy worries me. And you've got to get within the 35 for me to – or the 30 probably for me to feel good about it.
There it is.
But there, so Dylan, go ahead. How's this one finish up?
All right, let me get a couple more jabs in there, boys. If Ohio State wins, this would be the first 2-loss champion in the playoff era for the college football championship. Now, some people are saying, not me, because I'm the number one Buckeye fan this week. I want Ryan Day on those sidelines until my kids that I don't even have kids. I want them on the sideline until they graduate high school. I'm rooting for Ohio State here. Now, some people are saying, lost to Michigan. You have Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois. Maybe like a Mickey Mouse championship. Why are we letting these guys play? I wouldn't say it, Doug.
No.
I wouldn't say it. I'm just saying. I wouldn't say it.
You really think after these two teams' run, people will still say that? I understand those are two really bad losses. But to put on runs that are this good against this quality of teams, I think we got to put that to bed.
The runs are good. I'm just giving you a hard time.
I know.
I got to get my licks in while I can because who knows what's going to happen.
You know why he's doing this, Jordan? Is because he's about to tell us why Ohio State wins right now. He's going to tell us why he's going to pick Ohio State. That's why he has to get the licks in now.
I want him to. Here's what I'm going to say. I think Ohio State 8-point favorite. 46.5 total points. I think this game is going to be higher scoring than what people think. I think that Ohio State will have that one explosive pass. I don't know who to. I don't know if it's going to be Smith, Egbuka, maybe even Carnell Tate. That's like a 60, 70-yard touchdown.
Could be Henderson again.
Honestly, it could be Henderson in that key 8-minute stretch there. The last 4 of the first half, the first 4 of the second half. I wouldn't be surprised. And I also think we see an explosive play from Notre Dame special teams. I'm thinking maybe even a defensive score wouldn't be crazy if Will Howard makes a bad decision. My final score here, I'm going Notre Dame 27, Ohio State 24. That's my final. I'm going Notre Dame national champions.
Wow.
I'm rooting for you guys. I'm rooting for you.
I'm rooting for you.
Interesting. Very interesting stuff. I thought you were gonna fully commit, and then you pulled it right back. I thought you were going for it. Jordan, national championship. What do we got? Final score and winner.
But before I hit that, just the stigma of it's a Mickey Mouse, whatever the fuck. Yeah, we're gonna drop our first one here. Over an hour. I went over an hour and a half. I went almost an hour and a half. The Marine in me, the hat, it's on. But people don't say that about the NFL. I mean, you look at the New York Giants. I actually said this with the interview earlier today. The New York Giants went 8-8 and beat the undefeated team in NFL. Went and got hot and beat the Patriots. Are you going to call that a Mickey Mouse championship? Absolutely not.
Not me, Coach.
The Lakers in the bubble.
Rudy's got it. Lakers in the bubble. Dodgers 2020.
But I mean, I'm just saying the first time college football does a more traditional NFL layout to let whatever team gets hot at the end of the year, and this is kind of what people wanted. You wanted to see a team that got hot at the end of the year make their run. Where all in the BCS era, okay, you dropped a game here, you dropped a game there, but you went on to be the hottest team at the end of the year, but you're not going to get your shot. So this new format, especially with 12 teams, it allows that team to find themselves. You can mess up, but if you get in and you get hot at the right time, that justifies everything. And I say, but you could say that for both teams. Both teams got hot at the right time. These are the two hottest teams in NCAA football right now, based on the runs. Their losses, they just don't matter to me right now. It stings. I want us to beat Michigan next year and finally get the burden off our back. But to sit here and say, "Oh, I'm going to focus on those only 2 losses," which one loss Ohio State got revenge on and
Yeah.
totally flipped the script. So
That's true.
just based on that win alone against Oregon in this playoff run, I far from a Mickey Mouse championship. These are the 2 hottest teams here. But now that I got that off my chest,
we go.
you know, my
feel better?
prediction. I do feel better. I do feel better. I had to get it out.
We got prodded into that for sure. Prodded into that.
Yeah.
Confidence, baby. There we go.
Hook, reel, and sinker. But I think this is going to be a high scoring affair. I think both teams are going to make the explosive plays. Also, I look for Notre Dame to kind of mimic what Oregon did in the first matchup. Oregon did have that fake punt that took away, possession from Ohio State, and ended up setting them up for a score, which ultimately, won them the game. If you want to go back to a momentum play that turned everything, that was something they pulled out of their bag. I expect Notre Dame to do the same. So that's I have give me 35-28. Ohio State becomes national champions, but Notre Dame gives a hell of a fight. I think this is going to be a Rocky fight. This is going to be, Creed and Rocky going at it all night long, exchanging blows. And, Ohio State just pulls it out for Coach Ryan Day and a lot of these 4th and 5th year guys on the defense. That cements their legacy.
Well said. Last but not least, I'll go. I'm going to pick. I've been nervous about all these games, and Ohio State has come out and they've played the best football of the year late. Notre Dame, they've got to play like they've got to be great. I mean, they've got to be great to beat Ohio State, in my opinion. I'm going to go Ohio State 31-21. I think Ohio State is the better football team. I think they have the higher peak than Notre Dame. If Ohio State is able to play a clean game, I don't think Notre Dame can beat them in a clean football game. Even, I think it's going to take a lot for Notre Dame to win this game. The ball control is going to have to be impressive. It's going to have to be crazy. Riley Leonard's going to have to be on point. Jeremiah Love is going to have to play his best game of the year. A lot of these things, I just think Ohio State's defense has been so good. Give me Ohio State 31-21 to win the national championship. And I'm looking forward to a really good game. I'm gonna take the over on the 45.5 points or whatever it is right now. I'm expecting a little bit more scoring than some of the other pundits out there, but I'm looking really forward to this game, guys. I'm gonna come out and say it. I really appreciate you guys both. An hour and 30 minutes with us. We didn't plan for it to be that long, but it's been a fun show. We've gone through in depth, position by position. We've talked it out. We've jabbed. We've had fun. Rudy, what would you like to talk about before we get out of here? Plug what you got going on out in the West Coast, and before we get out of here tonight.
I got a lot going on. Matter of fact, I just we talked about this before the game. That if we're talking about the national championship game, that I have an interview with the Los Angeles Clippers for the in-arena host position there that they have at Intuit Dome in Inglewood. So I have that going on, which is kind of a big deal. And then, of course, you can always go to the RudeDogShow.com and check out what I have going on there. And then check out the predictive playbook. We go over bets and what's good for you, what isn't good for you, and what could be good for, anybody. That's done on Thursday mornings at 8 a.m. Pacific time. So outside of that, thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure once again to be on. And, clearly we're waiting for the Guardians, formerly known as the Indians, and Major League Baseball to kick off. So I'm sure we'll have a lot of that to talk about, and OPS and batting averages, and, who they're going to play, who they're not going to play, and all that good stuff in between. So thanks for having me on.
Definitely, Rudy. I appreciate it. Grant on YouTube, the game is on Monday night. Yes, Grant, that is 7, Eastern, 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific. If you go in between those time zones, I have no idea. So hopefully you can figure that out from there. Dylan, talk to us a little bit about what you have going on. And again, we appreciate your time tonight.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me, guys. You can follow me personally over on X at Wilkerson A. Dillon. That's where I do most of my sports stuff. I am a guest on a show called Carter Cast. We do about 3 shows a week, and we're actually going to be live streaming during the national championship for all of you Ohio State fans that either want to see me down in the depths of despair when they win, or celebrating the Ryan Day contract extension, whatever it is. So please go follow us over there. We're at CarterCast on YouTube, at CarterCast on X. Subscribe, all that fun stuff. And boys, thanks for having me. I know Rudy just talked about baseball. Whenever you want to have some Cincinnati Reds talk, because I have some thoughts about the Gavin Lux trade and the Jonathan India trade that I don't know if your audience is ready to handle. I'm fired up about the Reds.
We're actually we'll probably have to have you back here in 2 weeks, because I'm not thrilled with where Cincinnati's at either, and it sounds like you have some issues also. So we'll definitely have you back.
Save the day. Hoping Terry.
I have high expectations for Terry Francona. Rudy, if you'd like to talk a little bit of Reds, we're actually Reds fans down here. We know we sports cast, we do all that kind of stuff. So we're a little bit.
I'm a Pirates fan, so I'm the lonely one here. But you know what? I can always inquire with my buddy John Morosi, who does absolutely fabulous things on MLB.tv and .com, and get his insight. So maybe have him come on the show as well.
That'd be fantastic. Guys. Hell of a show tonight. We're going to send you guys off. Again, check out Rudy, check out Dylan. Extremely knowledgeable guys when it comes to what we've been talking about. Thank you guys again. We would love to pay you back in any way we can. It's been a hell of a show, guys. We will see you later. Jordan, great show tonight, man. Excellent show tonight. We really appreciate both those guys coming on.
Yes.
You know, Dylan, a guy we've talked to all season, back and forth. Just a fun guy, a super knowledgeable guy when it comes to sports. And then a guy that you've connected with over the last, couple months here on my hiatus, Rudy, out on the West Coast. He's absolutely killing it. He's been great doing his thing. That interview with the Clippers, phenomenal stuff. Jordan, we've gone almost an hour and a half. It's been a fun conversation. I don't know how we're going to break this down on YouTube, but 186 live viewers right now. Great numbers for us. Thank you guys. If you guys are watching on X, if you go over to our YouTube channel, I've got the link down in the bottom of our graphic here. Hit that subscribe button. It would help us out a lot. We're going to rebuild this thing, Jordan. Not that you did a great job while I was gone, and I appreciate the hell out of you for putting in the work. I'm back now. I'm excited to be back. Ohio Sports Talk. We're going to take it on to the next level, and we're going to keep working hard with friends, like the Carter Cast, like Rudy, all those guys. We're going to make it work. The Bearded Browns, who've always supported us also. Tons of people out there who have given us help.
Big shout out to Coach Trussell, who's came onto the program twice already.
The interview with him is still on our page. We've had a lot of fun stuff. The new year's come and gone now. We're focusing. We're shifting. The college football season's about to go away. Spring training's around the corner. We got the Cavs who, they took one on the chin tonight in a massive way. But we've got a lot to talk about coming up, and we're going to be hitting it full force. I appreciate you, buddy. Thank you for keeping up the slack while I was away. Hell of a show tonight, man. Hell of a show. So Thank you, everybody. 191 live viewers before we sign off tonight. Guys, this has been Ohio Sports Talk. I am your host, Doug. That's the coach, Jordan Maxson, and we will see you guys Tuesday night after the national championship to recap the whole thing. Go Buckeyes. OH.
I-O.